for example, we recently both talked about a show called Stranger Things. People loved the shit out of that show. I went and watched it, and I had problems with it. You know what I mean? Judging it from a writing standpoint, the same with Super. I wasn't gonna go in and judge it off of GT, or even the movies. You know what I mean? The recent movies like BOG and ROF. I went in and just judged it as a fan of the show, not judging it from the old mindset. But I mean, there's still problems with it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, it's one of those things where there's problems, and there's problems with Super. But again, is it fair to criticize it the way we are? Because a lot of people love the Boo Saga, but the Boo Saga has so many ass pulls that make no sense. Make no sense. Excuse me. Gotenks going Super Saiyan 3, even the invention of the Potara. So many fans were salty over Vegito not getting enough screen time, and I do understand that mentality of Vegito not. I get that. I totally get that from a Vegito fan. I do get it, because in Dragon Ball Z, Vegito had 6-7 episodes, and on Dragon Ball Super, he's got like what 6-7 minutes it seems in that episode. But even the invention of Potara Fusion was a retcon. Like, how are we supposed to know that? You know, that the Potaras actually did that. Even that idea was just kind of pulled, not really a retcon, it was more of an ass pull. So, Mike from Laughing Stock Media, what do you think, man? Do you think that we're overly criticizing Super? Do you think we have false expectations of this series now? Because, look, bro, the first 2 arcs were movie retellings, and they didn't even do a great job. Universe 6 was rushed and kind of sloppy. Now we have this arc, which is really, really good. But I think people are still complaining about certain aspects. Do you think that we should let it go? Like, what do you think about this? Because, like I said, I'm still pretty conflicted myself.
I mean, I feel like it comes down in a lot of ways to the fan base itself, because you have to remember a lot of people who watch Dragon Ball don't necessarily watch it as often or as frequently in turn as we do. So in a lot of cases, a lot of fans may be comparing their nostalgic ideas and representations of their own, of Dragon Ball Z to currently what we're seeing right now. And I'm sure, a lot of people probably saw GT, everyone who was a big Dragon Ball Z fan, and they didn't like it. So they probably feel like their mentality right now is, I love Dragon Ball Z, I didn't like GT, I didn't like what they did, now I'm going to look at Dragon Ball Super. So it's entirely possible they're raising it to a standard just like created in their minds through nostalgia that it just may not live up to. But the thing is, too, I think
nostalgia goggles are very, very... But okay, let me just step in one thing. Yes, nostalgia goggles are very dangerous, but in the fans' defense of Dragon Ball fans, Toei is counting on nostalgia as being their thing. If that were the case, they would have never brought back Trunks. They would have never brought back Vegito. These are things that they're doing for the fans for nostalgic purposes. So it's like you're feeding people nostalgia, but you're not giving them the quality that they had before. That's what I think a lot of fans are saying. What do you think?
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense, because when you look at all the studios, even in the United States, nowadays they're all trying to cash in on nostalgia. So if you look at, say, Star Wars came back after, all these years, and with the original cast, you see that, like, they're rebooting all these things from our childhoods, or that they're, making the X-Men movies, and they're making all these comic book movies and stuff that we used to love when we were kids. Everything is now coming to be new again in a different form, because now we're adults, and now they can just take our money, you know what I mean? So it makes sense from that perspective. But do I feel like maybe, like I've seen so many different series and movies and stuff at this point that I feel like I don't judge Super as harshly as a lot of other people do. Like, if you're only comparing it to, say, Dragon Ball Z, then sure, you're not going to like it that much, in some ways, because Dragon Ball Z was just so well executed in many parts. Even the Boo Saga had some great moments and great, animation. Like, the animation was really top notch in the Boo Saga, I would have to say.
Yeah.
But when you think about it like that, I feel that, yes, they are doing that, but even if you look at Dragon Ball GT, I know Dragon Ball fans hate GT, or at least a lot of them do.
But it's not that different from Super. It really...
Yeah, it's pretty much, it's like... Dragon Ball GT, if you look at it like its own anime, it's a pretty decent anime. It's not that bad by anime standards. I've seen so many terrible anime in other series anyway, and Super, I think, is enjoyable in many degrees, even if you count the first 2 seasons. Like, if you just count it as its own standalone thing, I don't think it's anywhere near that bad, and I really enjoyed this arc for the most part. It's just, maybe they do hold it to too high of a standard, but it's gonna be really telling once it gets out in the English dub to the American Western audiences what they really think about it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is about the retcons. That's been the big topic. Also, I want to get to Geek List thoughts on this. You know, Dragon Ball's always had retcons. I think the big problem with Super Episode 66 is the fact that it was a lot of ass pulls. I mean, the Vegito retcon pissed off a lot of Vegito fans, and honestly, it didn't piss me off, but it was a little bit annoying because people were trying to defend it by saying, oh, well, they never gave an actual explanation for the defusion. Well, the explanation they gave us in the manga was that it was the atmosphere, and then, of course, people ran with this whole, like, boo magic, which is completely fabricated by Dragon Ball Wiki. Fuck Dragon Ball Wiki for making up bullshit. But now they're saying, well, it's a good retcon. It might be a good retcon, it might not be, but it's just annoying because of how long it took for them to get to this retcon. Because remember, you know, maybe in a few years, okay, this is going to be an interesting perspective. Maybe in a few years, when Super's finished and people watch the entire series from the beginning to end, Dragon Ball Z and then Super, maybe then it'll feel differently. But for us who have been watching this shit for decades, I find it weird that it took them this many years to explain why the diffusion happened. Oh, well, because there's a 1 hour time limit. So that ruins a lot of our discussions that we have had for decades about Vegito and Gogeta and the differences between permanent fusion and temporary fusion and stable bodies. All of that is out the window, and I felt that it was very contrived and overdone. The whole, oh, you use too much power so the fusion runs out of time faster. It's just, it's very overdone. It's been done like 4 or 5 times in Dragon Ball. The thing with the GT comparison that a lot of people have to, you know, when you're watching or listening to this video, I hope that you can get your fandom away from you for just a second. GT is very similar to Super in the sense that GT had so many great ideas and great concepts, but the execution wound up being a little bit, you know, not every time, you know, there's good and bad stuff in GT, but the execution tends to be the one that people point to and say, oh, well, it's a letdown, it's disappointing. Whereas with Super, it's the same thing. I mean, we all wanted Battle of Gods to be better, and some thought it was better. Resurrection F arc was an atrocity, it was an abortion. But the whole story is bad. Like, Resurrection F was the beginning of us getting these, like, Vegeta and Goku have these new blue hair forms, like, nice. Like, they still have not given us a thorough explanation of how that's even possible. They've given us hints here and there and, you know, ideas, but we haven't had a full explanation of that. You know, and then you've got the whole Golden Frieza, oh, well, I never trained, so I have a new form now. Just very contrived and lazy writing. That's what this is. This is...
It's bullshit.
It's bullshit. It's lazy fucking writing. So then you fast forward to Universe 6, and you have these new characters that all look cool, but we have no backstory on any of them. What do we know about them? We know that Kaba's from a planet of Saiyans. That's all we know. We know that Hit is an assassin. That's all we know. We know that Botamo is whatever. Magetta is a...
Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, there you go. Magetta's a metal man. Like, it's like they don't even flesh out the characters, whereas in Dragon Ball, and especially Dragon